The morning at the bustling diner was alive with activity. Dishes clattered, conversations mingled, and the sound of sizzling breakfast orders filled the air. Amid this organized chaos worked Harper, a young waitress known for her warm smile and kind heart. Her innate ability to brighten even the gloomiest regular's day had earned her the respect of many, and she always gave each customer her very best. Yet on this particular morning, as Harper balanced a tray of steaming pancakes near the window, something unusual caught her eye. Outside, on the curb, sat a small golden retriever puppy. Its fur, muddied and disheveled, barely concealed its fragile ribs beneath the thin coat. The puppy's large, pleading eyes roved slowly over the scene inside, its gaze fixed on the plates of food carried into the diner. No aggressive barks or frantic whines emerged. Instead, a soft whimper escaped as it inhaled the enticing aromas. Harper's heart immediately ached for the little creature. She paused, her fingers tightening on the tray, and whispered, almost inaudibly, "Poor thing." Although stray dogs were not uncommon in the area, something about this pup, its abandoned yet hopeful look, struck a deep chord within her. Without hesitation, she set the tray down and turned toward her manager, Mr. Connor, who was preoccupied with his clipboard. "Hey, do you think I could?" she began, but he cut her off sharply. "No. Don't even think about it, Harper. We're not feeding strays," he barked, barely glancing up. His tone left no room for argument. A business was a business, not a charity. Frustration welled up inside Harper. She knew that every day the diner threw away leftover food, yet here was a creature in desperate need. "What harm would one meal do?" she murmured under her breath. Still, Mr. Connor's stern command left her with little choice but to obey, or so it seemed. Moments later, as she passed the counter, Harper made a decision that would change everything. She grabbed a plate of scrambled eggs, bacon, and toast left by a customer and quickly wrapped it, tucking in a small cup of water. Stepping out the door with quiet determination, she approached the puppy. The creature flinched initially but did not run. "Hey, little guy," Harper said softly as she crouched down. "Are you hungry? Here, I've got something for you." The golden retriever tilted its head, hesitated just a moment, then began devouring the food with a hunger that broke Harper's heart. Stroking the pup's head gently, she whispered, "You're not alone anymore." Unbeknownst to her, her kind act was being witnessed, and it would soon set in motion events she could never have imagined. Standing outside the diner, Harper lingered as she watched the pup's tail give the first subtle wag of joy. "You were starving, weren't you?" she murmured, scratching behind its ear with tenderness. In that fragile moment, hope and compassion mingled in the quiet exchange between a lonely animal and a caring soul. Just then, a harsh voice shattered the brief intimacy. "What are you doing?" Mr. Connor's booming tone drew every eye to the door. Harper's heart pounded as she looked up to see him standing there, arms crossed and face twisted in disapproval. "You were just feeding a stray dog, weren't you?" he demanded, his voice raised enough to draw attention from within the diner. Harper's cheeks burned with embarrassment. "I was only trying to help," she started, but the manager's cold interruption cut her off. "I told you repeatedly that this is a business, not a charity. Do you have any idea what happens when that pup comes back tomorrow?" he snapped, his anger intensifying with each word. In that instant, the disapproving stares of customers through the window added to her humiliation. Before she could muster a defense, Mr. Connor's final words struck like a sledgehammer. "You're fired, Harper. Pack your things and get out." The impact was as sudden as it was devastating. A simple act of kindness had cost her her job. Harper stood frozen as Mr. Connor turned on his heel and stormed back inside, leaving behind a silence punctuated only by the soft, sorrowful whimpers of the stray. With her throat tight and her eyes stinging, Harper looked down at the trembling puppy at her feet. "It's okay, buddy," she murmured, forcing a smile despite the rising tears. "It's not your fault." The golden retriever, as if understanding, nuzzled her hand, offering a quiet consolation in its own way. Harper's mind raced with worries about bills and rent now that her steady job was gone. But even amidst her personal crisis, the tiny creature's hopeful eyes sparked a glimmer of optimism. "Maybe getting fired wasn't the worst thing that happened," she whispered, more to herself than to the pup. Before she could dwell on these thoughts, the sound of an approaching car disrupted the stillness. A sleek black SUV pulled up in front of the diner, its engine purring softly. shielding her eyes against the sudden glare of sunlight. Harper watched as the driver's door opened and a tall, well-dressed man stepped out. His polished shoes clicked on the pavement with deliberate grace, and his calm, authoritative voice reached her ears. "Excuse me, miss." Harper hesitated, still cradling the puppy close to her side. "Are you the one who fed this dog?" the man inquired, his eyes shifting from her to the little creature at her feet. "Yes, I am," she replied cautiously. "But why?" The man studied her for a moment, then his expression softened as his gaze met that of the puppy. "I've been looking for this little fellow," he explained gently. "He's been missing for days and belongs to someone very special." The pup, momentarily pausing its meal, tilted its head as if in recognition. Then, with a soft smile, the man knelt and extended his hand. "Come here, boy," he coaxed in a tender tone. After a moment of hesitation and a brief glance between Harper and the man, the golden retriever cautiously approached, nuzzling the offered hand. "There you are," the man murmured, patting the pup's head as if reuniting a long-lost friend. "He belongs to my daughter. Scout is her best friend, and she's been inconsolable since he vanished." Harper blinked in surprise as the man produced a sleek leather business card from his pocket. "We did something incredible today," he said. "I'd like to offer you an opportunity in return. Come by this address tomorrow morning. I think you'll be very interested." Harper stared at the card, speechless at the prospect of a new beginning. As the man led Scout to his waiting SUV, the little dog barked a cheerful goodbye, as if promising that their encounter was only the start of something much larger. Standing there, with the business card clutched in her hand, Harper felt a mixture of loss and possibility. A single act of kindness had already changed her life forever. After that fateful morning outside the diner, Harper's life began to shift in unexpected ways. Clutching the sleek business card in her hand, she soon found herself standing before the doors of the Evergreen Animal Rescue Foundation. A modern, glass-fronted building emblazoned with a name that resonated with hope. With trepidation mingling with anticipation, she took a deep breath and stepped inside. The reception area was bright and welcoming, decorated with framed photographs of rescued animals whose bright eyes and gentle smiles told stories of second chances. A friendly receptionist greeted her with a warm, "Good morning," and soon Harper explained that she had been invited by someone. Before she could finish her sentence, a familiar voice called out, "Ah, Harper, you came." Turning toward the sound, Harper recognized the tall, composed man from the previous day. Now dressed in a more casual yet confident manner, he approached her with an assured smile. "My name is Andrew Dawson," he said, extending his hand. "My family runs this foundation, and we're very grateful for the kindness you showed yesterday." Harper accepted his greeting with a mix of relief and curiosity. Andrew's tone was gentle but earnest as he continued. "What you did for that stray dog was more than an act of kindness. It was a moment that reminded us all why we do what we do here." They walked together along a polished corridor lined with images of animals in various stages of recovery. Andrew explained the Foundation's mission: rescuing abandoned or abused animals, rehabilitating them with love and care, and ultimately finding them permanent homes. Every space they passed, from the bustling medical wing where injured animals were treated with tender expertise, to the adoption center humming with hopeful energy, spoke of dedication and purpose. Harper felt as if every step echoed her own commitment to compassion. Andrew paused near a large window overlooking an outdoor play area. "This is where our rescued animals regain a bit of their lost joy," he said, his voice softening as he watched a group of dogs chasing one another in the sunshine. "It's a place of healing. And you, Harper, have that same healing spirit." Harper's heart swelled as she looked at the happy chaos outside. Her thoughts drifted back to the stray puppy she had fed, and though the memory of being fired still stung, she realized that the events of that day had opened a door to a new beginning, a place where her compassion would be celebrated, not condemned. They continued their tour as Andrew introduced her to colleagues who shared genuine smiles and words of encouragement. Every conversation reaffirmed the Foundation's collaborative spirit and the community of rescuers working tirelessly for the voiceless. In a quiet corner of the facility, Harper was shown a small room where records of rescued animals were meticulously kept. "Each file here represents a life touched, a story rewritten," Andrew explained. "And every life matters." The sincerity in his words made Harper feel that her own journey, from a young waitress whose simple act of kindness had cost her her job to a passionate advocate for animal welfare, was only just beginning. As the tour concluded, Andrew led Harper to a modest office with a large desk piled with reports, photographs, and plans for upcoming rescue operations. "We believe that people like you are the heartbeat of our work," he said, his gaze warm and affirming. "We'd like to offer you a position here. You can start part-time. If it feels right for you, and I know it will, we can make it full-time." Harper was overwhelmed. The possibility of turning her misfortune into a vocation dedicated to saving lives filled her with gratitude. I would love that," she stuttered, the simple words carrying a weight of hope and renewal. Andrew's smile deepened as he handed her a schedule and a detailed orientation plan. "There's much to learn, and every day here will be filled with challenges and rewards. But I have no doubt that your compassion and drive will make a real difference." As Harper reviewed the plan, her mind buzzed with possibilities. The foundation's walls were lined with success stories of animals that had overcome abuse and neglect, and she knew she was about to become part of something far greater than herself. Stepping out of the office later that day, Harper's thoughts were a whirlwind of excitement and cautious optimism. Outside, the gentle hum of the city mingled with the distant barks of rescued dogs, and she felt a connection, a sense that her heart had finally found a home. Though the memory of the diner still lingered like a distant shadow, it was now transformed into a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. With the business card burning softly in her hand, Harper resolved to embrace this new chapter with every bit of the kindness and determination that had once cost her everything but was now set to define her future. On her drive home that evening, the city lights blurred past, and Harper replayed the day's events over and over in her mind. The transformation was palpable. A moment of rejection had blossomed into an opportunity to heal not only abandoned animals but also a wounded spirit. In her heart, she believed that every act of kindness, no matter how small, had the power to change the world. And so, with the promise of tomorrow gently beckoning her forward, Harper looked ahead with renewed determination, ready to dedicate her life to the mission of the Evergreen Animal Rescue Foundation. The day had ended, but the journey had only just begun. Every detail of her new world, every smile shared by a colleague, every hopeful bark from a rescued dog, was a reminder that sometimes the most challenging beginnings lead to the most rewarding futures. Harper's new path was lit by the promise of compassion and the assurance that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Harper's first days at the foundation unfolded like a gentle, transformative dream. Each morning, she arrived with a sense of purpose that gradually pushed aside the pain of her recent dismissal. The foundation's routine was a comforting symphony. Soft conversations among dedicated volunteers, the steady hum of medical equipment in the treatment wing, and the joyous chaos of animals discovering their new lives. As she settled into her new role, Harper found that every task, no matter how simple, became an expression of her inner compassion. Her schedule was filled with practical lessons and heartfelt introductions. Andrew spent considerable time showing her the ropes, patiently explaining the intricacies of animal rehabilitation. "This is not just a shelter," he explained one bright morning. "It's a place where hope is restored. Every animal here has a story, and it's our duty to help rewrite it." Harper listened intently, absorbing every detail. She learned about dietary plans, medical routines, and the delicate process of socializing animals that had once known only fear. In one corner of the facility, a quiet room held stacks of detailed records chronicling each animal's journey, from the moment they were rescued to the day they finally found a loving home. Reading these stories, Harper felt a profound connection. She understood that her own past hardship was now a prelude to something far nobler. Throughout the day, Harper's interactions with the animals deepened her commitment. In the medical wing, she assisted the veterinarians in gently cleaning wounds and administering medicines to fragile creatures. One rescued kitten, with wide, timid eyes and a history of neglect, slowly began to trust her touch. Harper's soothing words and soft strokes worked wonders, and soon the little feline was purring contentedly in her arms. In another corner, a group of dogs, each bearing the marks of past abuse, found joy in a game of gentle fetch. Their playful barks and tentative tail wags filled the space with an energy that seemed to heal old wounds. Yet it was in the quiet moments, when she sat down to update the records or carefully bathed a shivering puppy, that Harper felt the full weight of her new purpose. Every rescued animal was a victory over cruelty, every smile a small miracle of recovery. The Foundation's volunteers, too, formed a tight-knit community. They worked side by side with a common goal, sharing laughter, tears, and stories of past rescues that had changed their lives. Their dedication reminded Harper that she was not alone. Here, every person was united by an unwavering belief in the power of kindness. Between shifts, Harper found herself wandering the outdoor play area where rescued dogs romped freely. The scene was almost surreal, a place of raw joy and hope where the burdens of a troubled past were left behind. As she watched a golden retriever bound after a ball, its fur gleaming in the sun, Harper recalled the stray puppy from that fateful morning. That single act of compassion had led her here, to a haven where every life mattered. The thought filled her with warmth, and she silently vowed to honor that moment by giving her all to this mission. Andrew, ever the mentor, often joined her during these reflective walks. "There's beauty in every life we save," he would say, pausing to admire a particularly energetic pup. "Sometimes it's the quiet victories, the one who learns to trust again, the one who finds a family, that remind us why we must never give up." Harper nodded, letting his words sink in. In those moments, the scars of her past seemed to fade, replaced by the light of a shared purpose. As days turned into a week, Harper's role grew more active. She began coordinating small rescue missions with the volunteers, venturing into nearby neighborhoods to locate strays overlooked by the rest of the world. With crates, blankets, and bowls of food, she led teams through narrow alleys and quiet backstreets, driven by the belief that every lost animal deserved a second chance. Each rescue was meticulously documented, photographs taken, details recorded, so that their stories might one day help others understand the importance of compassion. During one such mission, Harper encountered a shivering puppy, hidden away among discarded boxes near an abandoned lot. Its eyes were full of fear and uncertainty, yet when Harper softly offered a piece of bread and a gentle smile, the pup edged forward. In that silent exchange, Harper realized that every rescued creature carried an unspoken plea for love and protection. As she wrapped the puppy carefully in a soft blanket and cradled it close, she whispered, "You're safe now. I promise." That promise, once made, became a guiding light in her every action. Back at the foundation, the atmosphere was one of quiet determination and mutual support. Volunteers exchanged encouraging words as they cleaned kennels and organized supplies. The sound of running water, the rustle of fresh bedding, and the soft murmur of reassurances formed a steady background hum that symbolized hope in action. In these moments, Harper felt that her life had found true meaning. Her work was a tribute to every small act of kindness that could mend a broken heart or heal a wounded soul. As the day drew to a close and the foundation's corridors quieted, Harper sat for a moment by a large window overlooking the play area. The fading sunlight painted the room in hues of gold and amber. She reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with a simple, forbidden act of kindness. In that gentle twilight, her eyes filled with resolve as she vowed to carry forward the legacy of compassion that now defined her life. The transformation was complete. Harper was no longer the young waitress burdened by the sting of rejection. She had evolved into a dedicated guardian of the voiceless. With every rescued animal, every smile rekindled, and every life saved, she felt the truth of Andrew's words, that the healing power of kindness could change the world. And as the foundation's lights dimmed for the night, Harper's heart shone with the promise of a brighter tomorrow. In the days that followed, Harper's commitment to her newfound calling grew even stronger. The routine at the Evergreen Animal Rescue Foundation was interspersed with moments of quiet reflection and sudden urgency as evidence of deeper cruelty began to surface. Though life at the foundation was filled with moments of tender care and joyful recovery, Harper's mind could not let go of the painful memories from her past, the cruelty of the diner and the callous dismissal that had nearly broken her spirit. Late one afternoon, as golden light filtered through the tall windows of the main office, Harper found herself meticulously reviewing files of rescued animals. Each photograph, each handwritten note in the logbooks, was a testament to survival and resilience. Yet amid the routine updates, her thoughts were drawn to the stray encounters she had witnessed outside the diner. The memory of that small, pleading golden retriever still lingered in her mind, a symbol of hope that had been ignited by one simple act of compassion. Unable to shake the feeling that there was more to that day than met the eye, Harper began to revisit the areas near the diner in secret. With her phone ready to record, she drove slowly through familiar streets at dusk when the world seemed quieter and shadows deepened. One evening, as she parked a short distance from the old building, she observed a cluster of stray animals huddled in a narrow alley. The scene was heartbreaking, a mix of emaciated dogs and terrified kittens scurrying for shelter. It was there that she first caught sight of a figure, partially obscured by darkness, aggressively shooing away a small cat with a broom. The memory of harsh shouts and cruel gestures stirred a deep anger within her. Determined to gather undeniable evidence, Harper spent several evenings in quiet vigilance. She recorded the sounds of angry shouts, captured video clips of stray animals being forced away, and noted every detail: the glint of a broom, the dismissive tone of a voice, and the anguished expressions of the frightened creatures. Each recording added to a growing dossier that would soon become crucial evidence against those responsible for the cruelty. Harper knew that if she could expose the truth behind what had been happening at the diner, she might finally bring justice not only for the animals but also for herself. When she returned to the Foundation one evening, Harper's hands trembled slightly as she shared her findings with Andrew. In a quiet, solemn meeting in his office, lit by the soft glow of a desk lamp, Andrew examined the footage with a deep frown. "This is more than just wasted food or a misunderstanding," he said slowly, his voice heavy with concern. "It appears that the cruelty extends far beyond what we suspected. The behavior you documented, it's deliberate, and it's inhumane." Harper's heart sank as she listened. The realization that the cruelty might be part of a broader pattern, driven by a man who sought to control and intimidate, spurred her into action. "We must do something," she insisted, her voice trembling with determination. "We can't let these innocent lives continue to suffer." Andrew nodded, his eyes meeting hers with fierce resolve. "We will gather every piece of evidence we can and work with animal control. But we must also be cautious. The man behind this, Grady, won't take kindly to exposure. He's known to be ruthless when cornered." The conversation left Harper with a mix of dread and resolve. The peaceful routine of the Foundation was now shadowed by the threat of escalating cruelty, and Harper knew that the fight for justice was only just beginning. In the following days, Harper balanced her work at the Foundation with secret excursions to capture more evidence. On one chilly evening, as a light rain began to fall, she found herself crouched in an alley near the diner, phone in hand, recording as a stray dog cowered in the shadows. The quiet whimpers of the animal and the muffled, angry shouts in the background painted a picture of despair that Harper knew had to be brought to light. "You deserve so much better," she whispered softly, her eyes filled with empathy as she documented every detail. Back at the Foundation, volunteers began to notice a change in Harper's demeanor. Though still warm and caring with the animals, there was now an edge to her determination, a silent promise that she would not rest until every act of cruelty was exposed. In hushed conversations with her colleagues, she recounted the chilling details of what she had witnessed, urging them to be vigilant and to support her efforts. The team, inspired by her unwavering courage, started to keep an eye out for any unusual activity in the neighborhoods around the diner. Together, they began to compile reports and testimonies from local residents who had observed similar acts of cruelty. As Harper's dossier grew, so did her resolve. Every piece of evidence was carefully catalogued, each video file and photograph labeled with time and location, ensuring that nothing would be lost. In her private office at the Foundation, a modest space lined with stacks of papers and a single computer, Harper spent countless hours reviewing the recordings. The images of frightened eyes, the sound of angry shouts, and the unmistakable cruelty of a man determined to control the fate of stray animals fueled her determination. "We must expose him," she would whisper to herself, fingers trembling as they typed out detailed logs. In one particularly emotional evening, as thunder rumbled quietly in the distance, Harper reviewed footage that captured a stray cat being chased out of an alley with a broom clutched in a rough hand. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized the gravity of the situation. The evidence was irrefutable. This was not a one-time lapse, but a pattern of calculated cruelty. Determined to honor the trust of every animal that had found a temporary haven at the Foundation, Harper vowed to continue her work, regardless of the risks involved. Her nightly patrols and secret recordings soon became a part of her routine, a solemn mission undertaken with courage and compassion. Even as the threat of retribution loomed, Harper felt that every act of documentation was a step toward a safer world for these vulnerable creatures. With each new recording, she added another layer of truth to the case against Grady, the man who, she now knew, was responsible for the suffering of countless stray animals. As the days wore on, the mounting evidence stirred whispers within the local community. Neighbors began to speak of a man who would not tolerate any stray animal near his establishment, a man whose cruelty had become the subject of hushed conversations. For Harper, these rumors confirmed what her recordings had already revealed. In the soft glow of morning light filtering through her office window, she made a silent promise. The truth would be known, and the suffering of these animals would end. With mounting evidence securely in her possession, Harper's daily routine evolved into a blend of dedicated animal care and covert investigative work. Each morning, as she arrived at the Evergreen Animal Rescue Foundation, the warm greetings of volunteers and the excited barks of newly rescued animals filled her with a renewed sense of purpose. The foundation had become a sanctuary not only for animals in need but also for those who, like Harper, believed in the transformative power of kindness and justice. During her shifts, Harper took on additional responsibilities. Alongside the routine of feeding, bathing, and comforting animals, she began organizing rescue teams to canvass the surrounding neighborhoods. Volunteers gathered each day with crates, blankets, and bowls of food, tools that were not only instruments of care but also symbols of a community united against cruelty. Harper led these missions with quiet authority, her voice gentle yet insistent as she instructed her team on where to search and how to approach frightened strays. "We must be careful and compassionate," she reminded them. "Every animal we help is a life saved." One overcast afternoon, while leading a small group through a maze of back alleys, Harper spotted a timid group of cats huddled near a decrepit storefront. Their eyes, wide with uncertainty, pleaded for help. Approaching slowly and reassuringly, she coaxed one out with a few soft words and a morsel of food. One by one, the cats began to emerge from their hiding places. Harper carefully collected them in a carrier, promising them safety and warmth. As she carried the rescued cats back to the foundation, she could feel the heavy weight of responsibility, but also a deep, abiding hope that her actions were making a difference. Back at the shelter, the rescued animals were greeted by experienced volunteers who immediately attended to their needs. Medical staff assessed their conditions, and dedicated caregivers bathed and fed them. In the midst of this flurry of compassionate activity, Harper took time to compile her growing dossier of evidence. Every detail was logged meticulously: dates, locations, descriptions of incidents, and even the voices captured in her recordings. She knew that when the time came, this comprehensive record would serve as undeniable proof of the cruelty inflicted by Grady and his associates. Late in the afternoon, as the foundation's halls echoed with gentle murmurs of recovery and the soft patter of paws on tile, Harper met with Andrew in a quiet corner of the building. They sat side by side, reviewing the compiled evidence on a laptop. Andrew's expression was grave as he scrolled through the files. "Harper, what you've gathered is astonishing," he said quietly. "This isn't just a few isolated incidents. There's a clear, disturbing pattern of deliberate mistreatment." Harper nodded, her eyes reflecting both exhaustion and determination. "I can't stop thinking about those frightened eyes, the desperate looks of animals forced to hide. They deserve better, and I promise I won't let this go unnoticed." Andrew leaned forward, his tone firm yet supportive. "We need to present this evidence to the proper authorities. But we must also prepare for the backlash that is sure to come from someone like Grady." Harper's heart pounded at the thought, but her resolve did not waver. "I'm ready," she declared softly. "If exposing him means risking further threats, then so be it. These animals are worth every risk." The conversation continued well into the evening, with Andrew outlining a plan to coordinate with local animal control and law enforcement. They discussed the safest way to submit the evidence and the importance of ensuring that every detail was documented beyond doubt. Harper felt a mixture of apprehension and empowerment. Every moment spent gathering these records was a step toward a future where cruelty would no longer be tolerated. As dusk gave way to night, Harper returned to the foundation after a particularly long day of rescue missions. The building, usually filled with the lively sounds of playful animals and busy volunteers, had settled into a quiet calm. In the soft glow of overhead lights, Harper sat at her desk, carefully reviewing one last set of recordings before closing her eyes. The images of frightened animals, the voices of cruel commands, and the relentless determination that had driven her through these turbulent days were all etched into her memory. "We must keep fighting," she whispered, her voice echoing in the silence of the room. In that quiet moment, the foundation felt like both a sanctuary and a battleground, a place where love and determination waged a war against cruelty. Every rescued animal, every kind gesture, and every piece of evidence was a testament to the power of compassion when it is fueled by an unyielding commitment to justice. Harper knew that the struggle was far from over. As long as there were those who inflicted suffering on defenseless creatures, her mission would continue. Yet in that commitment lay hope, a hope that soon, with the evidence in hand and the support of a community united in purpose, justice would prevail. Outside, the soft pitter-patter of rain began as dusk turned to night. The Foundation's volunteers, though tired, remained vigilant, ensuring that every animal was safe and every door was securely locked. Harper took a moment to gaze out the window at the darkened streets, feeling the weight of her responsibility. "I promise," she murmured, "I will not let these innocent lives be forgotten." And with that, she closed her eyes, determined to rise with renewed strength when the morning came. As the investigation into the cruelty began to gain momentum, the atmosphere at the Evergreen Animal Rescue Foundation grew tense with anticipation. The days blended into nights filled with cautious hope and lingering anxiety. Harper's dual life, caring for rescued animals by day and covertly gathering evidence by night, had become a constant balancing act. Every sound outside the shelter, every unexpected shadow, set her nerves on edge. Yet she pushed forward, driven by the belief that truth and compassion would ultimately triumph over cruelty. In the early hours of one rainy night, Harper set out once again with her phone and a sense of guarded determination. The streets were slick with rain, and the usual hum of the city was muted by the steady downpour. As she navigated the narrow alleys near the diner, her heart raced with a mixture of fear and purpose. The memory of previous encounters, of furtive glances, of distant, angry shouts, remained fresh in her mind. She parked her car discreetly and, wrapped in a worn jacket, crept into the dimly lit backstreets. Her eyes adjusted to the darkness as she moved silently, every step measured and cautious. It wasn't long before she came upon a scene that sent a shiver down her spine. In a narrow passage behind an old warehouse, a small group of stray dogs had gathered. Their eyes, reflecting a mix of exhaustion and fear, watched as a man in a dark coat brandished a broom with an aggressive intensity. The man's voice was low and harsh as he shouted commands, sending the animals scattering in all directions. Harper's hand trembled as she raised her phone to capture the incident. Each moment, every desperate bark and every frightened whimper, was documented with meticulous care. "I will not let their suffering go unseen," she vowed silently as she recorded the unfolding scene. Returning to the Foundation later that night, soaked by the rain and with her heart pounding, Harper immediately shared the new footage with Andrew. In the safety of his office, illuminated only by a small desk lamp, they reviewed the video together. Andrew's eyes narrowed as he watched the aggressive figure in the dark, his voice grave. "This is it, Harper. This is the evidence we need. It proves that his cruelty isn't isolated, it's systematic." Harper nodded, though her heart felt heavy. Every image of suffering, every instance of needless aggression, reinforced her determination to bring the truth to light. They spent the next few hours discussing the best course of action. Andrew outlined a plan to compile all the evidence and submit it to local animal control, ensuring that nothing was left out. "We must be methodical," he stressed. "Every clip, every photograph, must be cross-referenced and documented. We cannot allow any detail to slip through the cracks." Harper agreed wholeheartedly, knowing that the tiniest detail might be the key to unlocking a full investigation into Grady's operation. As they worked side by side, the quiet hum of the computer and the soft clicking of keys filled the room, a steady rhythm of determination against a backdrop of injustice. In the days that followed, Harper found herself growing more vigilant. Every evening, she took extra care to secure the Foundation, double-checking locks and ensuring that all cameras were operational. Volunteers were briefed on the possibility of further encounters, and a heightened sense of community security permeated the building. Despite the ever-present threat, the bonds between the staff and volunteers deepened. They shared their fears, their hopes, and their unwavering belief that the truth would soon bring justice for the abused animals. Amid these efforts, Harper also began to notice small but significant signs of community awareness. Neighbors who had once turned a blind eye to the stray animals now approached the Foundation with concern, offering tips and even volunteering to help. The word about the cruelty was spreading, and with it, a collective resolve to stand up for those who could not speak for themselves. "Every whisper, every small act of solidarity, strengthens our case," Andrew remarked during one late-night meeting, his voice low and determined. Harper agreed, feeling that her efforts, however dangerous they might be, were part of something larger, a community united in the fight for justice. One particularly stormy night, as thunder rolled in the distance, Harper received a phone call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was low and menacing, warning her to back off or face the consequences. The message was brief but chilling. Despite the fear that coursed through her veins, Harper's resolve only hardened. "I won't be intimidated," she said aloud, more as a promise to herself than a defiant retort. With Tucker's reassuring presence by her side, she prepared to continue her patrols, knowing that every step forward was one more chance for these vulnerable animals to be heard. By the time morning light broke through the clouds, the investigation was well underway. The compiled evidence had been forwarded to local authorities, and the Foundation's management had increased security measures in anticipation of any further threats. Harper, though tired from nights of relentless vigilance, felt a renewed sense of purpose. The struggle was no longer just about rescuing animals. It was about exposing a system of cruelty and ensuring that no more innocent lives would suffer. In the quiet moments before the hustle of the day began, Harper sat by the window, watching the rain taper off as the sky brightened. She thought of the many animals whose lives had been touched by her efforts, and a fierce determination welled up within her. "We are making a difference," she whispered, her voice steady and filled with conviction. And with that, she prepared herself to face another day of challenges, knowing that the fight for justice was a battle worth every risk. The days following Harper's relentless patrols were charged with an electric tension, a sense that the final confrontation with cruelty was drawing near. The Foundation had become a hub of both healing and covert resistance, as volunteers and staff worked together to ensure every stray was safe and every piece of evidence was meticulously documented. The mounting pressure from Grady's network was palpable, and every hushed conversation was laced with concern about what might come next. One brisk morning, as the Foundation bustled with renewed energy after another successful rescue mission, Harper received an unexpected visit from a local resident. An elderly woman, with eyes that spoke of both sorrow and determination, approached Harper timidly. "I've seen what you're doing," she said softly, "and I've witnessed cruelty that I never thought possible. I want you to know that you have my support." The simple words filled Harper with warmth. In that moment, she realized that her efforts were resonating beyond the walls of the Foundation, that there were countless others who, too, were ready to stand against injustice. The encounter spurred a series of similar visits. People began to leave anonymous notes of encouragement and share their own accounts of stray animals being mistreated near the diner. Each piece of testimony added another layer of weight to Harper's growing dossier. With every new detail, the evidence against Grady became more damning. The collective voice of the community was rising, a quiet chorus of compassion that refused to be silenced. At the same time, Harper's nightly patrols continued. Even as the weather turned chilly and the nights grew longer, she took to the streets with the same unwavering determination. One evening, as she walked with Tucker along a deserted road, her phone buzzed with an urgent message, a tip-off that Grady's men were planning to disrupt the Foundation's operations. The message was terse, just a few words, yet its implication was clear. Harper's pulse quickened, and she immediately called Andrew. "We need to be ready," she said in a hushed tone. "They're not just watching, they're planning something." Andrew's voice on the other end was calm yet resolute. "Gather everyone. We'll secure the perimeter and double our patrols tonight. We won't let them catch us off guard." Back at the Foundation, a flurry of activity ensued. Volunteers hastily checked locks and adjusted security cameras, while others reviewed the evidence Harper had gathered. The atmosphere was intense but united. The team knew that every precaution taken was not only for their own safety but also a stand against the cruelty that threatened to undo their hard-won progress. Later that night, as thunder rumbled in the distance and the wind whispered warnings through the trees, Harper found herself on high alert. Every shadow seemed to conceal a threat, and every sound was magnified by the tension in the air. With Tucker faithfully by her side, she patrolled the darkened grounds of the Foundation, her senses straining to catch even the faintest hint of danger. The silence was broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and the soft, reassuring patter of rain. In these moments, Harper's thoughts turned to the animals she had rescued, the quiet, trusting faces that depended on her every day. "I won't let them down," she whispered, her voice resolute despite the fear gnawing at her heart. As midnight approached, a particularly unsettling incident sent a shiver down her spine. While checking the back fence of the building, Harper noticed that a section of the fence appeared to have been cut. Her heart raced as she realized the significance of the act. It was a deliberate attempt to breach the sanctuary. With trembling hands, she snapped several photos and quickly reported the finding to Andrew, who immediately mobilized the team. "We must secure the area," he ordered, his tone firm and commanding. Volunteers rushed to reinforce the fence and check every entrance, their actions swift and coordinated. Despite the chaos, Harper managed to remain focused. Every detail, every whisper of the wind, was logged in her mind as potential evidence. In the days that followed, the atmosphere at the Foundation grew increasingly charged. The security measures were tightened, and daily patrols became a routine part of life. Yet even as the Foundation's doors remained secure, the threat of Grady's retaliation loomed like a dark cloud. Harper's resolve was tested repeatedly, but she found strength in the solidarity of her team and the unwavering support of the community. "We are stronger together," Andrew would remind everyone during briefings, his words a constant source of reassurance. Amid the tension, Harper continued to work diligently on her dossier. Each new recording, every detail captured during her patrols, was added to a growing body of evidence that painted a stark picture of cruelty and neglect. Late at night, in the quiet solitude of her room, Harper would replay the recordings, her heart heavy yet determined. "This is for every animal that has suffered," she vowed, her voice a mix of sorrow and fierce determination. One crisp morning, as the threat of further violence hung in the air, Harper received another chilling message on her phone, a final terse warning: "You have made your bed. Now lie in it." The words sent a jolt of fear through her, but they also steeled her resolve. She knew that turning back was not an option. The battle was now a matter of principle, and every act of cruelty exposed would serve as a beacon for change. That day, as the Foundation staff gathered for their morning briefing, there was an unspoken understanding that the stakes had never been higher. Harper's eyes met those of her colleagues, and in that silent exchange, they all knew that they were ready to face whatever came next. The fight for justice was now a collective struggle, a battle waged not just for the animals, but for the very soul of their community. The mounting tension eventually culminated in a decision that would change everything. It was time to take the fight public. Andrew and Harper, along with several key volunteers, began planning a press conference that would reveal the damning evidence against Grady and expose the cruel practices that had haunted the stray animals for far too long. The Foundation's main hall was chosen as the venue, a space that had witnessed countless stories of recovery and resilience. In the weeks leading up to the event, posters and flyers were designed with bold messages like "Every life matters" and "Stop animal cruelty now," and community leaders began to lend their voices to the cause. On the morning of the press conference, the Foundation buzzed with nervous energy. Volunteers moved swiftly to arrange chairs, set up a modest stage, and ensure that every technical detail was perfect. The atmosphere was a heady mix of anticipation and determination, as every individual understood that this moment could be the turning point in the struggle for justice. Harper, although anxious, felt a powerful sense of purpose. Her journey, from the moment she fed a stray outside the diner to the countless nights spent gathering evidence, had led her to this defining moment. Andrew stood by her side as they prepared to address the gathered crowd. "Today," he said quietly during a final briefing, "we share not only our evidence but our story. Every rescued animal, every act of kindness, is proof that cruelty can be challenged, and that together we are stronger than any force of injustice." Harper nodded, her eyes filled with both determination and vulnerability. She knew that speaking to the public meant exposing not only the cruelty of Grady but also her own struggles, a risk she was willing to take for the sake of those who could not speak for themselves. As the clock struck the appointed hour, reporters and community members gathered in the hall. The room was filled with an expectant hush as Harper stepped onto the stage. With the weight of her experiences and the hope of countless rescued animals behind her, she began her address. "My name is Harper," she began, her voice steady despite the emotions roiling beneath the surface. "Not long ago, I lost my job for showing compassion to a stray dog. That act, however small it may have seemed, opened my eyes to a world where cruelty thrives in silence. Today, I stand before you with evidence of that cruelty. A cruelty perpetrated by someone who has long abused the trust and lives of stray animals." Her words resonated throughout the hall, each sentence building the narrative of her journey and the evidence that had been painstakingly gathered. Harper recounted the incidents in vivid detail: the aggressive shouts, the harsh treatment of animals near the diner, and the systematic neglect that had forced countless strays into the shadows. Every detail was backed by the recordings and photographs now displayed on a large screen behind her. "These are not isolated incidents," she declared, "but a pattern of calculated mistreatment that must be stopped." The audience listened in rapt silence as Harper continued, her voice unwavering even when recounting the most painful moments. She spoke of the countless nights spent in fear, the danger she had faced in gathering the evidence, and the resolve that had kept her going. "I have witnessed cruelty that no animal should ever endure," she said, "and I refuse to stand by while those who are powerless suffer in silence." The room filled with murmurs of approval and empathy. Reporters scribbled notes furiously, and community members exchanged glances of solidarity. Andrew stepped forward to supplement her testimony. "We have compiled indisputable evidence of these abuses," he stated firmly. "Local animal control is now reviewing the recordings and photographs, and we are calling on law enforcement to take decisive action against those responsible. This is not just about one individual. It's about creating a community where compassion triumphs over cruelty." His words added gravity to the moment, and the collective determination in the room grew palpable. The press conference continued with a series of questions from reporters. Harper answered each query with clarity and honesty, detailing her experiences and emphasizing the importance of safeguarding the welfare of every stray animal. The discussion was intense yet respectful, a dialogue of accountability and hope. As the session drew to a close, the room erupted into applause. People rose to their feet, their claps echoing like a promise that change was coming. In that moment, Harper realized that her single act of kindness had blossomed into a movement, a powerful call for justice that could no longer be ignored. After the conference, the foundation was abuzz with support. Volunteers embraced one another, and community leaders offered pledges of assistance. The media coverage was swift and widespread, and within hours, the story of Grady's cruelty and the courageous efforts of the foundation had spread far and wide. Yet even as hope soared in the wake of the press conference, the shadow of retaliation lingered. Harper's phone continued to buzz with anonymous messages, each one a stark reminder that the threat was not yet over. But the united spirit of the community provided a steadfast shield against the darkness. As the day ended, Harper stood at the entrance of the foundation, looking out at a crowd of supporters and volunteers. In that moment, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment mixed with the sober knowledge that the battle was still being waged. "We have taken the first step," she murmured, "but our work is far from over." The crowd responded with murmurs of agreement and determination, a silent vow that the fight for justice would continue, no matter the challenges ahead. That night, as Harper retired with a heart both heavy and hopeful, she reflected on the day's events. The press conference had not only exposed cruelty but had also sparked a movement that promised to bring accountability and change. And in that movement, Harper knew every rescued animal, every piece of evidence, and every act of compassion would be celebrated as a victory against injustice. In the days that followed the press conference, the momentum generated by Harper's courageous testimony and the overwhelming public support began to ripple throughout the community. Local law enforcement and animal control, now armed with the undeniable evidence, started an investigation into Grady's operations. The story was splashed across newspapers, social media, and television news segments, and soon the once-hidden cruelty became the subject of widespread public outrage. At the foundation, the atmosphere was one of cautious optimism. Volunteers and staff worked tirelessly not only to care for the rescued animals but also to support the ongoing investigation. Harper found herself at the center of this whirlwind, juggling the responsibilities of her role at the shelter with the growing demands of being a public advocate for justice. Every phone call, every message of support, and every inquiry about the case reminded her that the struggle was no longer hers alone. It belonged to an entire community determined to stand against cruelty. One afternoon, as the foundation's doors swung open to a flood of community donations and volunteer sign-ups, Andrew gathered the team for an important meeting. "The investigation is making progress," he announced, his voice filled with cautious hope. "Local authorities have raided Grady's premises and uncovered records that corroborate our evidence. There is talk of charges being pressed and legal action moving forward." The news sparked a wave of relief and celebration among the volunteers, though everyone remained mindful that the battle was not yet won. Harper sat quietly as she absorbed the news, her thoughts returning to the long nights spent gathering evidence and the quiet determination that had driven her every step of the way. It was a bittersweet victory. The acknowledgement of cruelty and the promise of justice was hard-won, but the scars of suffering remained etched in her memory. "We must never forget," she said softly to a group of new volunteers, "that our work is about more than just numbers. It's about the lives we save and the hope we restore." Her words resonated deeply, inspiring those around her to work even harder to ensure that every rescued animal received the care and love it deserved. As weeks passed, the investigation into Grady's operation intensified. With each new piece of evidence, the case against him grew stronger. Law enforcement officials, now bolstered by community support and media pressure, began to make regular appearances around the foundation, ensuring that every possible measure was taken to protect both the animals and the people fighting for their rights. Harper continued her nightly patrols, though now with a slightly less heavy heart. The presence of increased police patrols and the knowledge that Grady's days were numbered gave her a renewed sense of safety, even as she remained vigilant. During one late evening patrol, as the rain began to fall softly once again, Harper paused outside the foundation. The familiar glow of the building and the comforting presence of Tucker reassured her. But as she looked toward the darkened street, she couldn't help but feel that the past was still trying to encroach on the future. "I won't let you win," she murmured, more to herself than to the empty night. And with that, she resumed her patrol, determined to protect the sanctuary that had become her home. Meanwhile, the community's response to the unfolding events was remarkable. Neighbors, previously indifferent to the plight of stray animals, had now taken up the cause. A local business even sponsored a series of educational workshops on animal welfare, and several community leaders pledged to support stricter enforcement of animal protection laws. The groundswell of support was a powerful reminder that compassion, when united, could be a formidable force against cruelty. Back at the foundation, Harper and Andrew worked side by side to compile one final, comprehensive report of all the evidence they had gathered. Every recorded incident, every testimony, was carefully organized and included in the dossier that would be handed over to the authorities. The process was painstaking, but it was also a labor of love, a testament to the collective dedication of everyone involved. "This document," Andrew explained during one late-night session, "represents every life we've fought for, every animal whose suffering we've witnessed. It is our call for justice." Harper agreed, feeling that her own journey had transformed into a beacon of hope for those who had been silenced. As the investigation moved steadily toward its climax, Harper found solace in the small victories. A stray dog that had once trembled in fear was now thriving in the safety of the foundation. A rescued cat, once wary of human touch, now purred contentedly in the lap of a volunteer. These moments, though small, were the culmination of a long and arduous battle, a reminder that even in the face of relentless cruelty, kindness would prevail. One crisp morning, as the foundation prepared to announce the results of the investigation, Harper stood before a group of reporters once more. This time, the announcement was different, less a call to action and more a declaration of victory. "Today," she stated with quiet pride, "we have received confirmation that Grady's operation will be shut down and that legal actions will be pursued to ensure that no animal suffers under his control again." The room erupted in applause, and for a moment, the collective weight of the struggle seemed to lift. Yet even amid the celebration, Harper's eyes were haunted by memories of the nights filled with fear and uncertainty, a reminder that the fight for justice was never truly over. In the days that followed, as the legal process unfolded and the community continued to rally behind the foundation, Harper took a moment to reflect on how far they had come. What had begun as a single act of compassion, a simple decision to feed a stray, had grown into a movement that had touched countless lives. Every rescue, every piece of evidence, and every voice raised in protest had converged to create a future where cruelty would no longer be tolerated. And so, in the midst of both triumph and lingering shadows, Harper resolved that the journey would continue. The work was not complete, and the scars of past injustices would serve as a constant reminder of why they must never relent. With a deep, steadying breath and the support of her community behind her, Harper knew that the future belonged to those who dared to care, and that together, they would build a world where every creature was cherished. As the legal proceedings against Grady gained momentum and his cruel operation was dismantled piece by piece, Harper and the team at the Evergreen Animal Rescue Foundation found themselves at a turning point, a moment when the suffering of the past could finally give way to hope for the future. On a bright morning that felt as if it carried the promise of change, Harper arrived at the foundation to find the atmosphere transformed. The building, once a battleground of whispered fears and secret patrols, now buzzed with the sound of renewed life and purpose. Volunteers were busy preparing for a celebration, a public event to honor the victories achieved through relentless courage and compassion. Banners proclaimed messages of unity and hope, and the smiles of rescued animals, now thriving in safe environments, filled the space with an undeniable warmth. Andrew greeted Harper at the door, his face alight with pride and relief. "Today is a day of celebration," he said, his voice imbued with the quiet triumph of justice. "Grady's operation is finished, and the community has spoken. We have proven that cruelty cannot stand when compassion unites us." Harper's eyes glistened as she absorbed his words. The memory of every long night, every moment of fear, and every act of defiance surged within her, each one a stepping stone on the path to this hard-won victory. As the celebration unfolded, community members, rescued animal families, and local leaders gathered in the Foundation's main hall. Speeches were made, and tears of gratitude mingled with laughter as the collective weight of injustice was lifted from so many lives. Harper was invited to speak once again, this time not as a lone advocate but as the voice of a united movement. Stepping onto the modest stage, she looked out at the sea of supportive faces and began, "We stand here today because we refuse to be silent. Every animal we rescued, every voice we raised against cruelty, has led us to this moment. This is not an end but a new beginning, a promise that every life matters." Her words, measured and heartfelt, resonated deeply with the audience. The room pulsed with a shared determination to never allow such cruelty to return, and the applause that followed was a resounding affirmation of their collective strength. In that moment, Harper felt not only the triumph of justice but also the gentle healing of past wounds, a healing that came from knowing that every small act of kindness could indeed spark a revolution of hope. As the day progressed, Harper took time to walk through the Foundation's grounds. She visited the outdoor play area, where once frightened dogs now frolicked freely under the watchful care of dedicated staff. A rescued cat, now purring softly in the lap of a volunteer, brushed against her leg as if offering a silent thank you. Every rescued animal, every healed soul, was a testament to the transformative power of compassion, a legacy that Harper knew would continue to flourish as long as there were those willing to stand up for what was right. In quiet moments later that afternoon, Harper sat with Andrew and a few close colleagues, reviewing the final documents and evidence that had led to Grady's downfall. The file, thick with records, photographs, and recordings, was a tangible embodiment of their struggle, a story of pain, resistance, and ultimate triumph. "This is our legacy," Andrew said softly, his voice full of both pride and solemnity. "It is proof that when we fight for those who cannot fight for themselves, we change the world." Harper listened, feeling the weight of those words as she looked at the faces of her friends, her colleagues, and the animals whose lives had been forever altered. The journey had been long and fraught with danger, yet every hardship had forged a deeper connection among them, a connection rooted in the unyielding belief that compassion is the strongest force of all. "I promise," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else, "that I will continue to fight for every creature that needs help. We've come too far to ever turn back now." As dusk settled over the Foundation that evening, the celebration wound down and people began to leave, carrying with them the light of hope and the conviction that change was not only possible but inevitable. Harper lingered a while longer, taking one last look at the sanctuary that had become her home, a place where every rescued animal was a testament to the power of kindness and every smile was proof that even in the darkest moments, hope could be reborn. In that quiet, reflective moment, Harper realized that her life's journey had transformed her from a young waitress fired for a single act of compassion into a determined advocate who had ignited a movement. The story of her struggle, recorded in painstaking detail and etched in every rescued soul, would continue to inspire others for generations to come. "This isn't the end," she murmured softly. "It's the beginning of a legacy built on love, resilience, and the unbreakable power of hope." With the final legal proceedings behind them and the future filled with promise, Harper stepped outside into the cool night air. The stars shone brightly above the Foundation, as if in silent tribute to every life saved and every battle won. With Tucker trotting faithfully at her side and the sounds of the night gently surrounding her, she took a deep breath and smiled. In that moment, Harper knew that while challenges might still lie ahead, the spirit of compassion would forever light the way, a beacon of hope that would continue to guide them all toward a kinder, more just world. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Join us for more uplifting tales of compassion, courage, and second chances. And always remember, every small act of kindness has the power to change a life. See you in the next story.